Alright everyone, we start off today talking about Lori Lightfoot, of course, getting sued by the Dailycaller. She's the Chicago mayor, and she is a bigot against white people, although she sleeps with them, because I think she has a white wife, if I remember correctly. There's a little bit of hypocrisy among some bigots, her obviously included, and she's the one that looks basically like a diseased version of Gollum. Don't look up pictures of her if you've got food in your mouth, because it could be a little bit of a problem. You know, it takes money to repair your electronic device. Anyway, links in down below in a pinned comment before I get into this, with links to 4 other video hosting sites, actually, because I make 4 videos a day, but only 2 are on YouTube. YouTube keeps slowly grinding down independent creators. It seems like it's churning through the backlog of everyone's older videos and essentially delisting them in search to make room for the next generation of content, which I guess kind of makes sense, only it screws people with large amount of effort that they've put into the site, but whatever. Also, I'll link my Substack. I did another entry last night on basically the death of the war against guns. The liberals have lost the culture war when it comes to the Second Amendment. It's funny that people are still demoralized and blackpilled on the issue. Here's the thing. They're suing her based on her decision that she's not going to have reporters, like interviews, from anyone unless they're black or brown, which is the new racist trope of the Democrats. The new trope is that if a person is from the Congo, they're exactly the same as a person from the Yucatan, like they're intermixable. They are completely interchangeable. It's interesting how everyone is, except, oddly enough, white people. They're not supposed to have a whiteness. They're supposed to be broken up according to their actual ethnic background, like Italians and Irish people are certainly not the same thing. It's funny because it's almost eugenic in origin, which makes sense when you look at the history of the Democratic Party, perhaps. Here's my thoughts. I actually oppose the lawsuit. She has the right to be racist. It's just bad that she's not honest enough to come out and say, well, I don't like talking to white people. I get more deference from people who think that because they look more like me, they ask more softballed questions, and there's a certain demographic politically that tends to overlap with race in the United States, and I want softball questions. I don't want to get asked anything hard. I want to basically be treated like Joe Biden is treated, where he tells people the kind of ice cream that he has and everyone oohs and ahs over it as though it's a major public policy decision. That's what she wants. She wants to be sheltered from the repercussions of her shitty actions, her hypocrisy. Remember when the lockdown first began, she got in trouble because she went to the hair salon, despite the fact that it wasn't even technically supposed to be open for anyone. And then she said, well, I have to go on TV, and I'm the mayor of Chicago, so it's important. You never hear about that one anymore. She's been handled with kid gloves all the way through anyway. But once in a great while, someone will ask her a hard question. Because once in a while, the lapdog media actually, like, someone makes a mistake. It's actually to the point where if, like, CNN, MSNBC, or whatever, if they ask anything other than an ultra softball of any public official with a D after their name, it's considered a mistake, and they quickly apologize, it seems. Especially with Beijing Biden. But Lori Lightfoot has the right to be a bigot. She just needs to come out and acknowledge to people that she has an internalized hatred of white people at some level, or a distrust, or that she's stereotyping them and says, well, white people are more likely to be conservative than people who are more my shade of skin color, which of course is BIPOC, and anyone other than whites. Therefore, in order to prevent myself from getting hardball questions, in order to have a nice easy interview, I'm going to incentivize people who have different skin colors to do that. Now, in the wake of this decision first being made, I can't remember, it was a fairly local or regional, like Chicago and Illinois broadcast. She was already set up for an interview with a man who was Hispanic, and they actually contacted the office and said, well, the interview's off in basically retaliation for this policy. This is the sort of thing that I've spoken of numerous times with regards to the Democrats, when you give them an inch and they try to take a yard. The problem is that the Democrats think that the little bit of wokeness that they injected into society that was considered palatable by the average person, and of course I think that it's all bullshit, but the average person was willing to overlook it a couple of years ago when it was a little bit more sensible. They just frame themselves as the opposite of like the total flip-out social justice cringe fringe. That was all they had to do to fool people. But when you start saying explicitly, I, as a public official who represents a bunch of white constituents too, will not be granting interviews unless the person has dark skin, when it is that transparently bigoted, it begins to turn people off. The The Democrats love to do this. It is the opposite from the Republicans, who given a yard will take an inch. We see that many times. We see it arguably right now. There are a bunch of Republicans that don't realize they have the mandate. They cut the Democrats down by more than half in the House. They gained a new state house. The Senate did not go for the Dems. It's a 50-50 split, and Joe Manchin exists as a modulating force, along with sometimes Sinema. You've got a mandate right now. The Trump Republicans won. They delivered a victory you never would have had with the Bush Republican side being at the fore. But they see that yard that they're being handed by a huge number of constituents that are telling them, go all in, stop Biden, and stop all this bullshit from happening, and then crush them in the midterms, and they're getting afraid, like Republicans usually do. Democrats, they think that because they honk won the presidency, they have some sort of massive mandate. Look at the slurry of crap coming out of the Dem-led DC groups right now. Oh, we're going to have free everything. Here's a couple more taxes. We're going to reconstruct every aspect of diplomacy. We're going to return all those regulations. It was funny because Scott Adams actually pointed out a couple of days ago, why isn't Biden on TV bragging about all the regulations that he's restoring because of the recension of Trump-era executive actions? Well, supposedly everything Trump did was terrible. Well, then he should crow about it, right? I'm restoring those business regulations that you have to exist under. Because it wouldn't work too well now, would it? Anyway, Lori Lightfoot, I don't think should be sued by the Daily Caller. There's no... Why... Let me ask this. I hate to defend Lori Lightfoot, especially when she's an anti-white bigot, but let's put this bluntly, rather. Is there any particular regulation or any particular, stipend tacked onto the First Amendment that says that a group that has been arbitrarily labeled the press and given press rights specifically has unfettered access to public officials regardless, and that there's going to be some sort of fairness doctrine attached? No, of course not. They have the right to be bigots if they want. The constituents can then react by either saying we don't care about this or kicking them out. And I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, everyone knows Lori Lightfoot's a scumbag, and the thing is, in this day and age, as far as the interview and press room side of things, it's almost vestigial. When you think about newspapers and shit like that, people get their news from the internet. It's like the reporters from one of the big networks, basically their Twitter account is more powerful than their on-air persona sometimes and gets more actual traffic. Their Instagram posting, their YouTube page, occasionally branching out into all tech, their Substack, something like that, is more powerful than their actual supposedly important journalistic job with regards to everything other than access to interviews and stuff. They're pre-planned and so forth. But then you go in and you try to interview a politician, they'll hand you a list of things you're not allowed to ask and shit like that. It's all sleazy corporate backroom sludge, and this is Chicago, so this takes it to another level. I'm not sure that I give a damn if Lori Lightfoot exposes herself as being a racist. She's just proving the point that people have said about her for years anyway. She's an ignorant, diseased, golem fish creature. That's about all. Peace out.